afternoon, saints of God. Good afternoon. I really feel like I'm part of this church. Every time I feel like I keep coming back and we come here. So I am truly, Paulus and I are truly feeling that we are the family of Trinity Church, and it's so good to see you all here. We were preaching over in BIC, but we couldn't wait to be here with yourselves.
Amen.
And this is our last Sabbath as we will be leaving back to South Africa on Monday morning. We realize that there are some very significant political tensions that are here in Thailand, and we leave our children here trusting that God will lead the way. If in our minds things do get beyond control, then we will have to take them out of Thailand back to South Africa. But we pray that that will not be the case. I have been asked, and thank you, June, for inviting me to speak to you on a very interesting subject. As family life directors in South Africa, and I suppose as a couple that has been married for 25 years, we realize that one of the biggest and most formidable challenges that individuals will face in their lifetimes is around the issue of money. Money plays a powerful role in every individual's lives. And more marriages statistically break up over money than any other cause or factor. And so today, what I'm going to share with you is part of a series that Paulette and I have run in South Africa, in Bermuda, and other parts of the world. Because God's people should not be in the same situation as the rest of the world. The tragedy, however, is that for most Adventists, we are exactly in the same situation, and if not worse, than the rest of the world. And yet we are meant to be the leading lights in the issue of finance. And so I want you to take what I'm going to share with you seriously, because I see that many of you are young enough to change the course of your life if you understand the principles that are not Errol's principles, but God's principles. And I'm happy that June and wife, not wife, not wife, not wife, this, don't worry, husband's coming, okay? Husband's coming, have taken, June and his wife have taken on the mantle of stewardship. And that's a very important department, because oftentimes people don't understand the value. Is everybody with me? So the series that we are doing is material that we have given to you as a church, and specifically to June and his wife, so that you can learn as a church to know how God's intention for your well-being when it comes to money. Does anybody not want to know anything about money? They don't want to know anything. Okay, so everybody wants to know. Everybody has an interest in money here?
Yes.
Yeah. And there's no struggle with talking about money on Sabbath.
Of course,
okay. And I want you to understand from Paulette and I's perspective, we started out our lives not understanding money. We started out. My wife and I came from two totally different backgrounds, and it's important for me to share this. I came from a background where my mother and father were very conservative with money. In other words, everything they bought was with cash. They did not spend what they did not have. And so there was a very strong conservative spend on money. We were very systematic, for instance, with shopping. Shopping was always on Tuesday and Thursdays. Tuesdays to stock up a little bit from the weekend, and Thursday the main shopping. As I remember as a child, this is how consistent it was. My wife came from a different perspective, where her mother with 9 children, Paulette being the last of 9, a single mother, did not have the financial stability that I came from. And so we learned 2 different ways in terms of how money management should look like. When you fall in love, you don't fall in love and consider how your upbringing and how money management is going to impact your relationship. For those years that we were courting before we got married, little did we consider or understand how prolific and how impactful our different styles of money management would almost tear us apart. But in those first and formative years, we had such conflicts about money, it almost brought us to the brink of divorce. Did you hear what I said? It almost brought us to the brink of divorce because I have a style and my wife has a style. And it's not to say that either style is wrong or right, but either style is different. And because either style is different, it produces conflicting results. And so when there's conflict in the family around money, then it becomes a central view. And then when debts begin to arise, when now there's more spend than income, when you get to the first or second week and have to pray for the next 2 weeks, when borrowing to make up for the month that is short becomes normal. Does somebody know what I'm talking about? A vicious cycle begins. And what I want to demonstrate is how that then begins to play out in your faithfulness with God. How it begins to play out with the concerns that you have. Paulette was speaking to an individual in this country from another church, and she said, the only thing that I think about 24 hours a day, with the exception of when I'm sleeping, is money. How to make it, how to get through, how to survive. So what you're about to hear, what you're about to learn, what you're about to receive can change your life if you understand that whatever scenario, situation, position you find yourself in, single or married, God has a set of principles that does not promise to make you wealthy, but it promises to give you peace of mind when it comes to money. Who wants peace of mind when it comes to money? Because the converse of peace is worry. So if I was to say how many people are worrying about money, the same amount of hands should about come up, right? You're just too holy and righteous right now to admit. Does that make sense? So let's take it, and I hope that this will stimulate you as June and his wife begin this journey. That it be more than just a couple of afternoons. When we did it in South Africa, we did a whole week on it, and then we got families to take the booklet, we copied them, and gave them to families, and we encouraged families to work through it. And as they worked through it, and you know what happened in our church? In 6 months, the tithe grew by now let me put it into baht, by 900,000 baht in 6 months. Our offerings, I'm bringing it to baht. Sorry, it's not even 600, 1.8 million baht increase in 6 months. When people understood this, the income of our church, today our church is the highest returning tithe giving church in the whole of the union and the conference. Our budget has grown as a result to something like our church budget, not the tithe, our church budget is now sitting at 1.5 million baht. That's what our church budget is. The family life budget, I'm just trying to help you to understand. And these are ordinary people. But God did some extraordinary things in our personal lives that allowed us to do some extraordinary things in our church life. Does that make sense? So I want to share this with you. I want to start off, and you must give me a clock on when I can stop and then we get, because I can't watch the clock. You know me, I'll just go on. I could be here for hours. I want to talk about planning for the cycle of life. Planning for the cycle of life. Gosh, I don't think, well, you know, with my parents, when you talk about planning for the cycle of life, we're talking about, so at some point, God willing, you kind of can't wait to finish school so you can get to university, so you can get to work, so you can get married, so you can have children, so you can find yourself paying for your kids' school fees and all of those other things. Finally, when they're out of the house and finally you've paid the school fees, then it's the retirement years. There's a cycle to life. And the tragedy is that many people go through life with no plan. Now, we may argue that circumstances in our lives inhibit us from being able to plan. But not so in God's economy. That's what I want to sort of help us. And you may take notes if you wish on these things. There's a couple of thoughts that I want to give you first and foremost about ensuring that God provides for you. I'll share a couple of stories along the way. You know the text well. I don't even need to tell you. You probably hear it every Sabbath. But let's read it together. Proverbs 3:9. Let's read it. Can we read it together? Let's read it. Honor the Lord with your possessions and with all your so your barns will be filled with plenty and your vats will overflow with new wine. Which way do I need to move? I need to stand here. I can't stand here. I must go left or right. You know, when we were missionaries in South Africa, we landed to start a whole new life with 60 British pounds, 1 wife, 2 children, 6 suitcases, nowhere to live, no job, nothing. And I made a decision that I was going to work for God for 4 years. No one was giving me a salary. No one was paying me a salary. My employer was God. This was a decision my wife and I made. in the midst of that, I remember times when I'd be preaching and now the offering time would come. And you know that the person stands here and they read the text and then the deacons come. And my wife and I would have what we would call, let's say, it'd be 600 baht that we had been, money had been made in that particular week. And so we sat there and I looked at my wife and she would look at me. And I would then take out our tithe, which was 10%. Offering, which was 5% of the gross of 600 baht. And we would leave enough money for person's health. And then what was left was going to be for food for that week. And sometimes when we gave, we didn't know if there was going to be any way to survive for that week. But we looked at this passage of scripture, which talks about honoring, because it comes with a promise. It talks about the fact that your barns will be filled with plenty. Now, we didn't understand truly what that meant until we look back today at where that 60 pounds 20 years ago started to where we are today. Is testament of God's ability to do the impossible. Now, why am I sharing this with you? Well, a steward is someone who looks after the possessions of another. Does that make sense? That's what a steward is. They look after the possession of another. So Adam, from the very first instance of his creation, and Eve were placed in the garden to look after the possessions that God had given to them, namely the whole world, the animals, and all that was in it, and they were to take care of it. Make sense? But we must recognize that our bodies also belong to God, and we are simply stewards of what He has given to us. We are meant to be stewards of the gospel, which He has entrusted us with in order to give the message of salvation to others. We are meant to be stewards of time. And time is a commodity that cannot be given once it has been lost. We are to be stewards of the talents and the gifts that God has given to us. We are stewards of the earth and the nature that God has given to us. So stewardship is not simply about money. Stewardship encompasses so much more. Does that make sense? I'm just giving you the basis before we get into this. And so the idea of stewardship within the context of what I'm speaking about is that we are also meant to financially employ means and ways, it's God's expectations, that will not only bless God, but enhance your enjoyment of life. How many people want to enjoy life? There's not a lot of people who want to enjoy life here. Right, we want to, okay? So, I want us to remember some promises, and these are important promises. Jesus says, can you move this out of the way as well, just in case it's, then I can see it maybe. Jesus said, I have come that what? They may have what? Life, and they may have it more abundantly. That's what Jesus, He wants us to have an abundant life. However, the mistake that many people make is they assume that an abundant life is a life that can only be lived if one is wealthy. as in the world standards. And I want to demonstrate that's not always the case. Spending less than you earn is a basic and necessary step in the journey to achieve long-term financial security. And this is where I believe many make, included when we, in our early years, were making that fundamental mistake. We were spending not less than we earned, but we were spending what? More than we earned. Does somebody know what I'm talking about here? And you know the problem with Bangkok I found? You know, when we first came to Bangkok, I was so overwhelmed by the amount of shops, the amount of things to spend money on. And it's very easy in this part of the world to find yourself walking into a shop with an intention to get one thing and walking out of the shop with far more than what you intended to spend on. Does somebody know what I'm talking about? And you get home and you have to rationalize or even hide what you have bought because you know you've overspent. Does that make sense? It seems that in Bangkok, there is only a few things you can do. Work, spend. Work. There seems to be, I was desperately looking for a park just to see nature. Because it seems that life is all about just go to work, and then the minute you get from work, everything comes to life in Bangkok. It's like there's nothing happening in the day, but just as the sun sets, Lord have mercy, shops open just for those people who are coming from work. So this is a very important element. And the main source of financial difficulties, please remember this, is simply overspending. Now remember this, God cannot be blessed and therefore can't be a blessing to you when you spend and can't give back what is due to Him. Then how can He bless you if He can't trust you with the little that you've got? Does that make sense? It's important to understand. And husbands and wives, it is important that you sit down and talk about these things. Now, I've often been told, and I can only say that my wife and I still have differences. My wife at times can share that she can be an emotional shopper. Does somebody know what I mean by emotional shopping? Feel down one day, they'll solve the problem, go shop. Does that make sense? And for me, shopping for me is a once a year. So for instance, I literally shop once a year. Okay? When I talk about shopping, I talk about things that I need. I will do it once a year. That's simple. Okay? So like when I come to Thailand, that's when I do all my shopping. I will not shop again for anything
next year again
until next year. Most women said, "Is he crazy? How can he survive? My gosh, never." But this is just the different styles. Does that make sense? Now the key issue here is difficulties. Would you agree with me that one of the challenges to financial challenges is overspending? Who would agree with me on that? Anybody agree with me on that? Okay. Now remember, we're going to talk about this. This whole series that Jude is going to take you through is about how to solve that. What I'm dealing with is the introduction. Does that make sense? Just the introduction. So it's important to know the state of your business affairs. Proverbs 27, 23, 24 says, "Be diligent to know the state of your flocks and attend to your herds, for riches are not forever, nor does a crown endure to all generations." And so it's going to demand of you, and Jude's going to talk to you quite a bit about that, about how to ensure that you know your true state of affairs financially. It's going to be very important for you to do that, okay? when it comes to financial goals. So people without a financial plan live paycheck to paycheck, the equivalent of an existence lifestyle which leads many to despair. And we watch this over and over again, where we just can't wait until payday. You know how it is, when it's when you got payday, then wow, everything's good, and then bills are paid, and then you see this decline, you watch this decline, and then there's still 2 weeks to go. Does that make sense? Still 2 weeks to go, but you're watching the decline, and then it's finished, and now you've got a week to go, and now you're praying for that paycheck to come, and once the paycheck comes, it's back to normal. Then we watch the decline, and the reason why people get despair is they're saying, well, how do I get out of this treadmill where there's more month than money, number one, and seemingly we can't seem to move on in our lives, grow in our lives, take in a better space in our lives, because we're constantly in this rat race of more month than money. Anybody experiencing more month than money? Okay, no, these folks are ready for translation. They don't need this. They're ready for translation. They're fine. Most people, if we're deadly honest, experience more month than money. True or false? More month than money. The idea for this seminar is to fix that. Does that make sense? Where there's more money than month. How many people would like to experience more money than month? 10. That's right. More want to experience more money than month. Does that make sense? And that's why this is going to be so important for you. How do I ensure, and it doesn't mean somebody's going to give you a job. It doesn't mean suddenly, it's about what you're presently doing with what you've got. Does that make sense? That's going to be part of the journey that we're going to take you through. So, couples and singles should establish short and long-term financial goals, and then develop a plan for reaching those goals based on some biblical principles that we want to share with you. And what's going to drive the way you deal with money, because there are some people who deal with money in a pretty bad way. Would you agree with me? That's where corruption and very, very dark stuff goes on. We are not only defined by our family situation, married or single, with or without children. We are also defined by our values, which shape our goals, and the values are the ideas and principles that we consider correct, desirable, and important. So what I'm trying to share with you is that if you're going to become financially free, there are many ways to do it. Does that make sense? But to do it with the right values is the best way. What do you say? Would you agree with me? That's going to be the best thing for us to do. So that's why 1 Corinthians chapter 10 and verse 31 says, therefore, whether you eat or drink or whatever you do all to the what? Glory of God. So money has to do with glorifying God. Not just on Sabbath when we share our offerings or our tithe, but whatever we do in how we spend our money is important. I can see Paul is going to say something. You want to say something? Okay. In which context? Okay, you mean when I was... Okay, yes. No, I'm coming to that anyway. No, I'm coming to that. I'm going to take a break soon. Am I due for a break soon?
Yes, sir. Anytime you're ready.
Okay, right. I'm almost doing... This was just the introduction piece. Is the introduction okay? Yeah. It's okay? All right, that's good. That's good. Okay. I can continue just a minute or so more? Okay, that's good. So, now, while many factors affect daily living habits and financial choices, and I want to stop, I'm going to just go a bit here and then stop. Your employment situation probably affects them the most. Would you agree with me on that? because where there's no employment, there's no money, right? Your income level, business associates, and available leisure time are a direct result of the work that you do. Now, why am I sharing that? It's because I think you guys are there in terms of education, but there's always more. There's always greater possibility. And I decided to have a quick look, at the issue of education and career choice here in Thailand. Not that you're Thai because you're Filipinos, but I thought it was just useful to have a look. And it's quite interesting when I did a bit of research. One found out that, if you're a high school graduate, you're making about 9 to 10,000 baht. If you've got a degree with no experience, maybe about 12 to 14,000 baht. If you've got a master's degree, you've got about 19,000 baht. If you've got a doctorate, which I thought was quite distressing, there's only, after all of that work, 24 to 26,000 baht, after all of that struggle. But then I found that if you did an MBA, which was on another level, because so few people are doing MBAs, then the earning potential is 500,000 baht.
To 3 million.
Huh?
To 3 million.
To 3 million. Now, this was a month, and this was not a month, not a month,
per year.
a year. We're looking at these are monthly. But when I looked at the actual MBA, they found that if you've got an MBA, suddenly your income goes to another whole level in Thailand context. In the Thailand context, I don't know if anybody's experienced that, but now this was what was interesting. The reason I was sharing this is that for your children, I want you to think about this. It is critical, which I'm sure you already understand. In South Africa, we know that if you want to set up your children correctly for the future, between the time they start school and the time they finish their first tertiary degree, it will cost us in South Africa upwards of 3 to 4 million baht just to get our children from nursery to their first degree. One child.
Per child.
So if you're busy populating the world, then you must understand it through doubles. Does that make sense? God bless you for populating, but now you've got another thing to consider. Does that make sense? So 2 children, 6 million baht. I mean, in South African terms. I don't know what the numbers are in Thailand, but oftentimes, how often do we sit down and calculate what it's going to take to now establish our children so that they have the best possible start in life, because your economic and financial security is as good as the education that you acquire. Does that make sense? But here's an interesting piece about it. In America today, most people take out loans to pay for education. Does that make sense? Most first world countries, most third world countries like South Africa, it's a cash job. We don't know about loans. Everything we do is cash. Is that the same in the Philippines? Same. Okay? So the question you've got to ask yourself is, what means are you putting in place in your own educational capacity that is going to possibly improve your earning capabilities, that is going to set up the agenda for how you're going to meet the school expenses of the next generation that is yet to come? Does that make sense? That's a very important consideration that one has to make. So, let me finish this off, okay? So saving and investing for the future reduces the amount we can spend now on living expenses and entertainment. However, there must be an income stream that will provide for our needs when we are no longer able to work. And that is the big one. Because at some point, hopefully in retirement, you can no longer work. However, life can happen in such a way that you can stop working much shorter time, much sooner than you planned, through accidents or things that happen. sickness, anything. And we'll talk about those things in a little while. So I want to use this as just the basis before I get into part 2, where we're going to get into the issue of debts. Does that make sense? That's what we're going to get into, debt. And what the fundamental problem with debt is. I hope you've found this useful. We're going to take a quick break. I think June, you said someone is going to do something now. Thank you.